So, what does Sabrina Carpenter and the article by Vogue is having a boyfriend embarrassing now have in common? If you said, heartbreak is one thing, my ego's another, I beg you don't embarrass me, motherfucker. If you said embarrassment, you're right. And I just kind of wanted to show off a little bit. Dating has always been embarrassing, to say the least, but the level of embarrassment we're all feeling right now in the modern age is a little different than the embarrassment we had before, and a lot more grandiose. And today I want to talk about that with a little bit of philosophy mixed in there. And please, in order for you to understand my perspective, please hear me out, and have an open mind and an open heart. Feel free to disagree with me by the time you finish watching the video, and comment below what you thought about my thoughts, because I'm trying to be a voice, but not the right voice. Just a voice sparking conversation. Okay? Capiche? Now that we got that out of the way, grab your drink. I am having some dark drip coffee because love is bitter.
Who hurt you?
And it's bittersweet, but today it's bitter. So, as I mentioned, the Vogue article and Sabrina Carpenter, especially her please, please, please lyric, what they have in common is embarrassment. And I am going to try and make a connection, especially within the first part of this video, with embarrassment and ego. Because I believe that that is one of the missing pieces in the conversation we're having about embarrassment, which I feel is like an ego mismatch, right? So I'm going to read a part from the article that says, being partnered doesn't affirm your womanhood anymore, writes Chante Joseph. It's no longer considered an achievement, and if anything, it's become more of a flex to pronounce yourself as single, right? So, and then we're gonna go to the lyric that says, heartbreak is one thing, my ego's another, I beg you don't embarrass me, motherfucker, right? So what do these two phrases have in common, and what do they say about embarrassment from women's experiences while dating? I think the embarrassment essentially is coming from a woman's ego, and not ego in the negative sense that we're used to, that's normally associated with narcissism, but ego as defined as person's sense of self-esteem and self-importance, or the sense of I, or a summation of one's identity, personal interests, impulses. That's what we're talking about, right? So, and then we're going to talk about egoism, which is the pursuit of one's personal interests and promotion of one's interest, and how that relates to women in dating. For us to basically make a connection of everything I just said right now, we're going to look at the woman's ego timeline from the 1800s up to now. So I believe that the female ego has developed tremendously from what it was in the 1800s. It can be seen in the dating practices of the times all the way to this point. In the 1800s, the 1900s, the definitions of intimacy were a lot more rigid. The sexual nature of the times were a lot more puritanical, and when it came to dating, there was always a chaperone involved. Women didn't have much freedom when it came to pursuing their own suitors, and marriage, a lot of the times, especially in the upper classes, were seen as a strategical alliance where they trade their daughters to someone else's son, right? So women were essentially seen as property, essentially, where the father would give the daughter off to another person, either for a dowry or for some sort of financial exchange. There was very limited women's rights, and women's identities were mostly tied to their household and how they would either serve their father's household or serve the household they're going to marry. Obviously, it's not as black and white as I just described, but that was the general feel of the time. Then we moved to the 1900s to 2000s, where young people were a lot more freer from their family and could make their own individual dating choices. This is the era of the flapper girl, where girls can go out and party. And this was also around the time where the first wave of feminism, and I think the second and third wave of feminism, also started kicking in, where women were fighting for equal rights to work, equal rights to vote, equal rights to ownership. And this was also around the time where what's the word, sexual stuff. Also the time where birth control was developing as well. So the marriage as it pertains to children and a family was also starting to break down. This is around the time where you have things like the flapper girls going to parties and hooking up with people was developing. This is around the time where a person will go watch a movie and then you come to my car and go get some little drive and some happy head, you know? You get the point, right? This is around the time where sexuality was discussed a lot, especially as it pertained to women, and it wasn't just something that was hidden back in the dark. Like, this is around the times where people will go watch a movie at some movie parking lot and then get down and dirty. Okay. This is also the time where I think dating was also a bit hypergamous as well, but not as hypergamous as it was in the 1800s to 1900s, right? Now we have 2000s. This is around the time where there's more sexual liberation. Women have been working, especially in the Western world. Women have been working for a long time. They've owned assets, they own businesses, they own brands of their own. In pop culture, women as powerful, women as proactive members of society, that sort of language and messaging started also increasing and becoming more mainstream. If anything, I think women became more central focus of the culture, right? Fourth wave feminism came through, and divorce, babes.
Divorce, babe, divorce.
And women were more confident in divorce because they had things to fall back to. They had their own financial assets. They had communities that they could fall back to, where back in the day in the 1800s, if you fell back, if you divorced, you went back to your parents in shame.
Dishonor on you! Dishonor on your family!
And it was a big thing. Right now, divorce, you just break up, essentially. It didn't work out. You split assets, if any, and you have stuff to go back to. There's also the time where e-dating and dating apps developed, the pressure to be perfectly attractive. We all know the mid-2000s and the damage it did to people.
I don't know, I just don't think this is like great for me. I don't want to do it. I want to go home. Like, I can't take the pressure of it. Don't you think any job interview...
And dating became an accessory to the woman's identity, in a sense where at some point, especially if you were like a socialite or something, who you dated was who you were. This was something that I think was only maybe given to guys back in the day, where men could date as an accessory or marry as an accessory to their identity. As like, if you think about like, oh, I have to marry a woman that's from a good background, an educated woman, but not too educated, a woman who would not embarrass me in front of my peers. That's how it was. But right now, women are also thinking about the same things because they also have the same things to lose that men used to have. You know what I mean? Now this brings us back to ego. And what we've learned over these 3 timelines is that women have gained more. Their sense of self and identity and personal interests have expanded. If you look at an article by Bloom in 1976, it says that a predisposition towards masochism forms a socialization based on self-sacrifice, a tolerance of discomfort and deprivation. This was in regards to women's egos at the time of 1976. Which was true. A lot of the times, women's personalities and whole lives were fixated or pushed towards making a stable home for the family, ensuring that their kids and the household was taken care of so the man can go do what men do. And additionally is this article, I don't remember where I got, but if I find it, I will cite it, that said, by 1940s, almost all the effect of women empowerment had faded. Relationship advice directed women was again about taking care of their household. In this period, in fact, sexism rose with all of its glory. Women were advised to not only look after chores and the children, they were advised to feed their man's ego. The popular belief was that men had to work hard and had to suffer ample bruises on their ego from their employers, and it was the wife's responsibility to boost their morale by being subservient to them. Meaning, one of the center cores of the female ego was to also raise up the male ego. Like, why do you think it was important to have a woman develop the household? It was also that household that was tied to the man's ego as well, which I find very interesting. And again, this is not to say that, oh my God, men bad, women good. I'm just saying that that's how the language was directed to the times. And ego is not just something that just happens out of nowhere. It is a product essentially of the environment that you grow in and the people that are either directly immediate to you and the people you interact in your life. Like, your ego is developed from the interactions you have with people as it constantly reframes and reassesses your identity to yourself and your identity to your peers, right? So it was very interesting that around that time, this is the 1900s, where women's ego was tied to the man's ego, or tied to the self-sacrificing act of creating a household at your expense. You know, that's what I find very interesting about all of this. But then we move to the 2000s, right? We move to the modern times. We are still in the 2000s. Women's ego, especially in the Western world, because again, there's still much work to be done all over. Women have gained so much more that in the bandwidth that is their interest, there's so much going on. When a woman dates, it's not just that they're thinking about, oh, my marriage, my kids, who's gonna take care of me financially, how is this gonna look? It's a conversation about her financial assets. It's a conversation about her job that she's doing, the family and community that she's catering. There's so much to lose because she's gained so much. And I think this is also the price of approaching relationships as a partnership, because here is the male ego and the female ego has been slowly rising to the equal of the male's ego. And also why this has happened is because the language towards women's identities has changed so much over time. Like, there's a lot of more positive and encouraging messaging that exists where women are told, you can get the job that you want, you can be a scientist, you can be a business owner. Women have more access to financial education, right? Women are taught that they can speak their mind, be more assertive, be more aggressive, be more proactive. What I find very interesting about this dynamic is that the language towards men has only slowly being changed to accommodate this change that's happening towards women, whereas male's ego is still fed the same social programming or similar social programming to back in the day. Not as rigid as it was in the 1800s, thank God, but still quite rigid, still encompassing some of the traditional ideas of masculinity. It's only up until recently that we're seeing such a change, like with ideas of men being empathetic and men being able to cry and all this sort of stuff, you know? So it does create this sort of misalignment in the dating field where one ego is essentially an attack on the other guy's ego. Because you think about the conversation about men having to be providers, whereas that sounds beautiful in a society where women have to be provided for. What if a woman is already providing for herself? You don't really need a provider. You know what I mean? What you need is an equal partner, etc. And this, now we have a conversation of the type of providing that could create this sort of traditional relationship, when I think we should throw away tradition, embrace modernity, people. Or rambles, 2028 president of the world. My bane of my dating existence, and that is dating apps. Social media. This is the bane of my existence. Nothing has traumatized me so than dating online. Social media is a trauma I indulge in every day, but dating apps is another thing. Why are we talking about dating apps and social media as it pertains to the embarrassing nature that we feel about relationships? Before we start, we must all come to the agreement that dating apps are a business. It's a business of love. They're not trying to get you hitched so you never come back here ever again. Let's just get that out of the way. Dating apps are here to make money. It's capitalism.
I need to calm down. Everything's fine.
Amanda.
I'm an adult.
Dating apps is essentially feels like window shopping. You know, you go there, you look at the guy, you don't even read the bio, just look at how hot they are, then just swipe. Like, sometimes I don't even think they read their own bios, you know. I feel like sometimes I will say something from their bio and then put that in the freaking message. But, oh, I noticed that you like reading philosophy in your bio, so let's talk about Plato. And I'll be like, huh? Who's Plato? You mean, oh, platonic? No. And I'm like, get the fuck out of my face. It's mostly very visually oriented. But one thing about dating apps that I really find interesting is that it gives you the illusion of choice. This is also something that social media also provides, but dating apps give you the illusion of better choice. With each swipe, you're not it's gonna be better and better. Like, especially if you found one reasonable relationship on there, whether it was an FWB or a situationship or a strong relationship, as soon as y'all break up, you're back on there again. You're like, I swear I will never touch a dating app ever again. A few moments later, you back on that hoe, and the cycle continues. It never ends. Release me.
Release me!
But a very, very important part of dating apps I feel bothers me, and has nothing to do with embarrassment, maybe it does, but is the lack of dating structure and etiquette. You know, when we think about dating before dating apps, a lot of the people were introduced to you either by the environment you were in or people you knew. It was like, yo, my friend Joe, yeah, I worked with them back when I was like, okay, I'll do this in a freaking southern accent. Sorry, my friend Joe, I worked with him back when I was in high school. We used to go and do some Texas Bride together, and then back in the day, he was a real chill dude. He just recently got divorced. You got divorced? Yeah, I should hook you up with my friend Joe. He's a little bit fat though, but you know, it's the heart that counts. And then these days, you kind of are essentially dating strangers because you don't know. And the bios and the pictures are meant to bridge the gap. But it seems that despite that being what it should be in theory, in practice, things are moving faster than ever. Like, you don't know the people you're going to meet, yet there is no effort in bridging that trust/knowledge gap about each other. You know, texting on dating apps is the most unproductive form of communication I've ever seen, even though we're all speaking the language that we both understand. Because I don't care if you're going there for a one night stand, I don't care if you're going there for a good time, not a long time, I don't care if you're going there for marriage. All of them requires you to bridge some sort of trust/knowledge gap, you know, because this is a stranger. There's no one to vouch for this person. Yet it feels like a chore. It feels like the other part is not active on doing that. And it's quite common that you would go on there and the guy's like, just come over to my place, guys. I just swiped on you. Bro was like, come on. What if I'm a serial killer? What if I'm lying? What if I'm not? What if I'm a man with a gun? You know? So the ambiguity and the pacing on online dating is actually a very big problem, because how much to text, when to meet, how to meet, what to text in order to get there, when to have sex, all of these things are very unstructured on dating apps. And maybe it's because with Gen Z, a lot of our whole thing is that we are redefining the structures of the interpersonal relationships that exist. So maybe that's also why dating online feels unstructured. But I think that also adds to the point of why dating apps are just the bane of my existence, right? But in addition to that, maybe the reason why the conversation is just so unplanned, unstructured, no care whatsoever to bridge the gap. There is, what do you mean? Okay, listen. Even if the whole point of a one night stand is that you're screwing strangers that you don't know, you should at least know something about who you're going to be with. Especially if you met them online, you should at least know something. What do you mean? Hello, how are you? Here's a picture of my ding-a-dong. Come over. Maybe it's because they're strong. I don't know, bro. That's crazy. But additionally, and I think also why it goes in this direction is because humans feel disposable on dating apps. People feel disposable because you swipe, it's another person. You swipe another person. You swipe again, another person. Like, it feels like a never-ending stream of people until at some point it just feels like you're going through the cycle of the same people over and over and over again, just different outfits and different hairstyles. But this human disposability also adds to the lack of care that happens on dating apps, which I also think comes from social media. I think the problem with dating apps is essentially just from the problem with social media in general. A lot of people use social media as a standard for their relationships, even though social media lacks nuance. Social media is one of the reasons why, as a generation, we think everything is cringe. Right? Because social media creates this sort of romantic perfectionism that we use as a coping mechanism at this point, you know? Like, this reminds me of a meme that someone said, back in the day, you would see one baddie your whole life and you will never see them again. That baddie would be the baddie to bring you closer to God, and you will never see them again. Now you see baddies every fucking 10 seconds. Is a baddie on your timeline, a baddie on your phone, a baddie on your computer, a baddie in the movies you watch, and it just kind of creates this illusion that we're all baddies and everyone is expected to be a baddie, and that you too can attain baddies at every corner, because it makes like being gorgeous and beautiful, which was something that was seen as something rare, like exceptionally gorgeous, as something normal, which adds to the sort of like cringe nature, because now you think you need to be this perfect standard of beauty. You think you need to be perfect, when in reality, that's just social media. It's filtered, it's edited. Yes, there are some people who look like that naturally. Those are the people I'm talking about, in which back in the day, you see one of them and it brings you to church and be like, Pastor George, I'm sorry, you know what I mean? But like, most people are editing themselves to some way, either through like surgery or whatever. Oh, I forgot about something. The problem with dating apps also come from the problem with social media in general, where I feel like social media has made people feel themselves to be a brand. Basically, it's the marketization of people and their relationships as marketing assets, where it feels like people take the way that they exist, the sort of curated way that they exist in social media, as the way that they should exist in real life. But that creates a problem, because you are not a brand, you are a person. Branding is a very limited way of existence that's only extended to maybe corporations or people that are trying to sell some sort of image online. Like what I'm doing right now, I'm trying to sell you a brand of someone who's intellectual, cute, and sexy. You know, but in reality, I'm like a rat, a very adorable rat, but a rat. What I'm trying to make is the marketization of people creates this issue where people are no longer picking their partners based on what they actually care about from the partner, what they're interested, like their partner's hobbies, the partner's interests. What they are looking about is, how does this person look to my brand? And I think it's because, again, this is definitely an issue it's definitely a first world issue, to say the least. It's definitely, oh my God, why does this lighting kind of look, I'm so vain. Seriously, this has become a problem because people are picking people based on their brand, their personal brand. And I've been seeing a lot of videos actually on people talking about how to fix your personal brand, how to present yourself a certain way. And it is definitely true that the way you will present yourself speaks volumes to people. But the biggest problem about this situation is that you are not brands, and people are confusing branding with reputation. Reputation is based off what you do and how people perceive you based on your actions. But branding is just how you curate your presentation. That's literally it. You don't even have to do actions unless you're like a corporation. Corporate branding is a different thing. But a personal brand is you controlling the narrative by your visual appearance. It's a very shallow version of reputation, and people are trying to incorporate that into their dating life. We've always been people who care about the way we're viewed and perceived, and also pick and choose the people to fit the sort of like status we're trying to uphold about our lives. But right now it's getting ridiculous in the sense where even the status, it doesn't have substance. The status is something that is actually superficial, and we're trying to find people to add to that branding. People are becoming marketing assets. Vulnerability is embarrassing. And maybe dating feels embarrassing because being vulnerable is embarrassing. And vulnerability is one of the pillars of developing a very healthy relationship. But maybe vulnerability is embarrassing because with our generation and social media, everything is embarrassing. Let's just be for real. You know, especially when you start thinking from the sort of hyper vigilance that social media provides, where even when you're alone, there is the eye of social media in the back of your head trying to curate your experience to fit the brand or aesthetic that you saw online, that you've categorized yourself in. It creates this sort of cringe that we feel. Because you know what I've been noticing less and less of? A lot of people have been expressing their interest towards people that they want to date a lot less. And you know, I can understand it from maybe two perspectives. You can think about it like, oh my God, I don't want to catch a case. You know, what if someone says I'm a rapist for trying to approach you? Brother, how are you approaching these people? You know what I mean? I think being vulnerable has essentially lost its true meaning. And maybe it's because of therapy speak and how we try to like compartmentalize everything and overanalyze everything, when in reality it's just a guy or a girl pursuing someone they like. A good example of this, and I ain't forget, is Love Island season 7, when we had Jeremiah and Huda. I ain't forget the way people were abusing the term narcissism, love bombing.
Oh my God, bro.
Whole time Jeremiah was just a guy that pursued what he liked. I've been Jeremiah before. You like a person, you lock in. You can only like one at a time, so you just give your all. You're just yourself from the get-go. People were like, oh my gosh, he's love bombing her. At the beginning, at the very beginning, towards the end, I don't know, but at the very beginning, people were like, oh, he's just love bombing her. Like, you guys don't know what love bombing is, and it shows. Y'all saw it, one therapist online talk about it, and you ran with it. When in reality, love bombing requires an end game. And you could be there and be like, okay, the end game was winning the sort of $1,000, $50,000 reward or something at the end of it. But the reality is, at the beginning, at the very beginning, I don't think that's how the game works, where you just get at the very beginning. I think the issue that people had with Jeremiah on the show and outside the show is that, first of all, he was a very pretty man who was comfortable being in love or operating in a loving and vulnerable way. He liked who he liked and pursued it. No gimmicks, no nothing. You know, and I think this characterizes essentially a lot of these first world romantic problems, where we have a lot of language to describe the human flaws, nature, and like confusion we have around emotionally interacting with each other, but we don't know how to apply it realistically in practice, and we're using it to cope when things get difficult. I've also seen it with people trying to rigidly box themselves into specific identities instead of using it as an opportunity to grow yourself, like a life sentence, where a person will be like, I can't do this because I have trauma, you know, I have trauma, and acting as if that's a death sentence. You can definitely grow from it. It's gonna take time, it's gonna take effort, but you're gonna be like, my trauma led me to have some insert complicated therapy language that has been misappropriated, instead of using the time that you use to form that sentence to fix yourself. And that creates an issue, because when it's time to be vulnerable, we hide behind therapy speak, or we hide behind nonchalance.
Leave me alone!
For our generation that's supposed to be pioneering mental health, we're too nonchalant, you know? We are too nonchalant, and it creates this nonchalance to trauma dumping pipeline, where you just try to be like this hard to understand person, you know, you have no interests, no passions, no nothing. But in reality, you do. It's just a lot safer than expressing that and being judged. I find it very interesting the differences between millennial internet and Gen Z internet, where, because I grew up watching both, and millennial internet was a lot more freer. You could express your interests, your failures, you could express a lot, even bad things, man, but a lot, and feel comfortable in doing that. But in Gen Z, it always has to fit this perfect curated box of this identity, you know? Like, I remember seeing a video of a guy, this is not an example, I remember seeing a video of a guy who was dating this, like, I would say a bigger woman. He's like a gym guy. So he was dating this plump woman, plump like the earth, like the earth, this plump woman, right? And the comment section, the guys were literally going to the guy's page and saying, bro, she's chopped. Why would you date this woman? You are a gym bro. The fuck you look like dating a plump woman? And I'm like, God forbid, the guy likes what he likes. The woman wasn't even ugly. And even if she was, God forbid the guy likes what he likes. You're gonna like what you like unless it fits the box that you are categorized in. So you are a gym bro, you better go date a gym rat yourself. You gotta go date a gym girl. Like, you can't just be without it fitting this rigid box. We're compartmentalizing everything from our mental health to our personalities. And so doing everything else feels rigid and then it feels cringe. I'm sorry, I got overheated.
Everything's fine.
Amanda.
I'm an adult. This is the problem. So we started off with ego. Then we went to the marketization of people through social media and dating and the lack of dating structure, to being vulnerable, being cringe. If we were trying to make this relationship with ego, right? Yes, we have more to gain as women, because again, this article was focusing on women, but now I'm trying to make a sort of general argument for everyone else, right? Not only is there an ego thing, meaning we have more to lose, more to gain, therefore we can feel embarrassed because our sense of identity has expanded, right? But we're not only expanding and also simultaneously limiting our interests into this specific brand, specific identity that becomes a problem when dating, because now everything is going to be feeling cringe unless it fits your visual brand. And again, this is a first world problem. Tanzania, Africa, we don't have this shit. People don't think about that in Africa. I know, I'm African. Don't think about that there. Like, we're taking the lack of nuance that exists on social media in real life, and I think that's why nuance is dying, because social media is a very big part of our lives today. And it's occupying so much space that it's basically changing the way the world works from our perspective as we try and apply social media life to real life dynamics. And that's bad, because social media is an over-exaggeration of a lot of things and lacks nuance, and you take that into real life, it doesn't work. Whenever people are being vulnerable online, it's always for profit. You know, vulnerability is only not cringe if you make money out of it, which is crazy, because now we're trying to capitalize off human emotion and expression. You cannot just like what you like unless it makes you money. And that's freaked up, because again, we're limiting the very extensive, complex, vibrant nature of human life into this rigid box instead of expressing ourselves and being yourself, you know? And what I'd like to say is that I feel like Gen Z's biggest issue is that we want to be known without being perceived. And if we are perceived, it has to be in the specific way that we perceive ourselves. We want to control the perception of others. And it is in that control that we lose the beauty of life, you know? I do believe that control and structure is important, but we're structuring things that do not need to be structured in the first place. Like, in the age of social media, you're always perceived, even when you're alone, but it's not true perception. It's curated perception that bleeds into humanity. When in reality, all you have is your perception, because you don't know what the other people perceive you to be, and what if they're lying? You'll never know, right? But I think the biggest reason as to why dating is so embarrassing right now, other than the ego, is that we feel the perception of others and the weight of that a lot more than it was before. Back then, you had to worry about maybe your close friends and family and how they perceive you to be. But now it's strangers. Strangers could perceive you. And I want to be the type of person that tells you, you don't have to care about what people think. Just be who you are for your pride. We're humans. That's literally, we're social creatures. That's literally in the name, social. You know, social media has definitely exaggerated the perceptions of others and its effect on our lives to the point where we are treating ourselves like marketing assets. The point where everyone is just a small little company advertising itself to other company. And honestly, the sort of marketization of dating is nothing new. You know, you think of things like matchmakers and everything. It's definitely been there, but definitely not to this scale where you can't even date who you actually like, your actual type, because it might go away. It might go against the way people see you. You know, it goes against your personal brand. Like, it's not just people thinking that, you're also thinking that about yourself. And that's why dating is embarrassing, because everything is embarrassing right now, I fear.